Good morning. Oh, the streak continues. Good morning. How are you doing? I hope you're well. On this fine Sunday, I'm a bit croaky today. Possibly through driving home from parkrun. Well, driving to my mum's actually after parkrun with the window open to try and dry off all the sweat. Maybe I've caught a chill or whatever. But yeah, there you go. It's Sunday, and I'm talking to you, and I'm thinking, well, what do I say on a Sunday? Because usually it's a weekday, isn't it? And usually it's all to do with work. And here we are on a Sunday. And I've got a few ideas. I mean, I think if we're going to take this thing forward, then we need to kind of think about what to do with a Sunday that's different to maybe Monday to Friday and different to Saturday. I don't know about you. And it might be a kind of it might be a construct type thing, I suppose, or it might just be a cultural thing. But I find that Saturdays feel like doing days, don't they? And Sundays feel like relaxing days. They feel different. Now, I think that's to do with my age. You know, I don't know about you. I don't know how old you are, but Sunday feels very different because Sunday used to feel different, very different, didn't it? I can remember the days when shops weren't open on a Sunday. And I was brought up, and this is another interesting thing, and I feel Sunday has a kind of almost spiritual feel to it because, and again, this must just be my mindset because I was brought up in a Christian household for the earlier part of my life, probably up to about the age of 30. I would have referred to myself as a Christian. I don't anymore. That's a whole other story, maybe for another time. For the memoirs, maybe that's the one for the memoirs, maybe. But that's not to say that that I don't still feel spiritual, you know, because I think spirituality, inner being, inner presence, inner whatever, is a different thing, isn't it? Without necessarily attaching it to religion or religious observance, it's still something about a contentedness, a peace, a tranquility. And I find that now through meditation and through thinking about things. I am not by any stretch of the imagination a Buddhist, but by thinking about things from a Buddhist kind of perspective, it's probably what I do now. And there are loads of similarities, that's the thing, isn't it? So the point of that is Sundays have quite a different feel, at least to me, and I wonder whether they do to you. It's an interesting question. Does Sundays feel different? Because even in some ways, in a purely practical sense, the majority of us still work Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. That's a thing, you know, although we have lots of shift workers, we have lots of weekend workers now, but still the majority of people, this was borne out in a European study, I think, about now that I used it in my master's dissertation. So it was probably about 5 or 6 years ago, probably because it was a few years old when I used it. Majority of people still work 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, or broadly speaking, those kind of terms. So Saturday feels like a day for kind of re-establishing base camp, doesn't it? Then Sunday feels like a day when you can maybe do some other things and do something different. And I suppose the question is, what are those different things you do? And you'll know if you've listened to me before, if you've caught this particular episode, or the particular episode where I've maybe said this, I've said it a few times. I've shifted my thinking about weekends to not recovering from last week, but recovering for, preparing for next week. And it still involves doing the same things, maybe going for a run like I did yesterday, a park run, maybe kind of, you know, relaxing still, you know, maybe having a little bit more sleep, although having significantly more sleep on the weekend is a dangerous business because you end up then not being able to get sleep on Sunday night. If you have a lie in on a Saturday morning and a Sunday morning, then you end up not being able to get to sleep on the Sunday night, and you start to mull over what to work the next day, and that creates a night of poor sleep, and then you wake up on Monday and you're not feeling like work, you're not feeling ready, and all that kind of thing. So there's a danger in that. I've had a little lie in this morning, maybe about an extra hour, and feel good for it. You know, I'm not knocking that, but and I know not a lot of people can do this kind of thing, but you know, if you're one for lying in till 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock over a weekend, then you're probably doing yourself a disservice in terms of then getting to sleep on the night. So, but anyway, you know, so how did I get to that? But so that's important. Matthew Walker would suggest, Matthew Walker's a sleep expert. He'd suggest sleeping from the same time to the same time, day in, day out, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So weekends kind of feel different, and we do different things. So yes, recovering for next week rather than, or preparing for next week rather than recovering from last week, and it sets up a different mindset, And there's an interesting there's some interesting research quoted in some of these kind of well-being books and what have you that says people who plan their weekends meticulously, even if they do the same things had they not planned them, this is the odd thing, they end up on a Sunday night feeling a lot better about their weekends. So let's say you decide on Saturday, I'm going to go and do a park run. I'm going through my weekend now. I'm going to do a park run. I'm going to go and see my mum. I'm going to do a bit of gardening. I'm going to then just chill out in front of TV on the night and have a couple of glasses of wine, that kind of thing. Then on Sunday, I'm going to do this, do that, blah, blah. If you do that and you plan to do that, you feel better on a Sunday night than if you'd just done exactly those same things, but you hadn't set them up as a plan. I think that's fascinating. How on earth does that work? Do you know what I mean? So I think that's really interesting. But there's a few things that I've read this week that kind of resonated with me. And I think one of the things that I've tried to do in general is detox from the mobile phone. And I think there's all this talk about a digital Sabbath, digital detox, Sunday detox, all this kind of thing from these things. I think it's really important. Our mobile phones play such an important part in our lives now, and in good ways, but also in very bad ways. And then there's something about Sunday that, to me, is more about peace and tranquility. So there's a few things that I read. So I'll tell you about these things now that we've got that. Well, one of the other things that I wondered was, could Sunday be, you could tell me what to talk about. That'd be really interesting. Have you got a question for me? I see lots of these very clever, influencer type people go, yeah, have you got a question for me? And then it generates a whole load of content. Well, hey, so if you've got a question for me, I'll trigger this through the social media through the week. If you've got a question for me, then I could maybe pick up Sunday's question to do that. Maybe a bit more like a magazine show, like that kitchen program, cookery program that's on. What's that called? Seeing that in passing on occasion. So I was drawn to things come up by chance in my calendar. I find things sometimes that I think I should have a look at, and I just pop them in a date in the future. Facebook link. This was a Facebook link, but it could be a podcast link or whatever. And it was Aldous Huxley talking in 1961. I love it when this happens. It gives me, it doesn't give me joy. It doesn't give me joy. It makes me desperate, to be honest. Where people, great thinkers from the 1950s, 60s, and 70s are going, hang on a minute, we've got a problem here. Here's where we're heading, And Aldous Huxley, who wrote Brave New World, was talking about this in 1961. And he said that man is the victim of his own technology. Technology was made for man, not man for technology. Brilliant. Absolutely true. This is 1961. Television, I think, was a thing then. We're only just radio. So we're not talking about the technologies, the invasive technologies we've got now. We're talking about very, what we'd consider now low-level technologies. But how much does TV permeate our lives now? Just put it on. Bit background noise. Put it on. Be nice. And then we get flipping Gloria Hunniford and flipping Loose Women and flipping people like that telling us what to do and why to do it and stuff. And we get, people seeding ideas in our heads that we might not have had or that aren't well thought of, because they're on the telly. Anyway, I digress. Man is the victim of his own technology. Technology was made for man and not for technology. I think we have to propose a caveat to this. We have to propose a challenge to this, I suppose, in a sense, because they said the same about the printing press when that was created. They said the same about that. They said the same about TV, when that was created. This is probably this point here. And now we're saying the same about smartphones, but smartphones are essentially different. You can't. Well, you can now on your smartphone, but when television was invented, you couldn't take your television with you anywhere. You couldn't take it with you. When you went out to do the shopping. Books you can take with you somewhere, print and press, but you still can't read a book while you're doing your shopping, for example. So it is different. It is fundamentally different. He says we must re-establish control over our own inventions. We must re-establish control over our own inventions. Psychological control. Smartphones, brilliant things. I hear stories all the time because it's a particular thing for me. Thinking about smartphone usage, I enjoy thinking about that and my own smartphone usage. And I think it was a friend of mine who was telling me that his friend had ditched the smartphone, got one of these. What do they call them? What, a dumb phone or whatever they call it. I can't remember the exact term people use. But and he found he was just stuck because suddenly he needed a map to get somewhere. Great use of a smartphone, fabulous. Or he needed to do something anyway. So he didn't have it. So these are great inventions, but we must control them. And this is the insidious part of it. Aldous Huxley again. It is possible to make people contented with their servitude if you can provide people with endless amounts of distractions and propaganda. So people become quite content with their place if you provide them with enough distraction and propaganda. And how much that we see on social media, on the TV, how much of that is propaganda in the broadest sense of the word? Advertising, in my head, is propaganda. Buy this and be happy. Well, you won't be happy. You know what I mean? Necessarily. You'll be happy for a bit. So people become servants of the machine. If you distract them often enough and give them enough propaganda. So if you feed their minds with particular ways of thinking, you start to think that way. We know this because we know how we can use this positively in terms of self-talk. We do positive self-talk and we seed our thoughts. We become those thoughts. So if you're constantly given propaganda that tells you to think in a particular way, you start to think in a particular way. And then if you're distracted sufficiently by Escape from the Jungle and all them kind of ridiculous programs, Towie and stuff, if you're distracted often enough, you never think about it. You never think about what you're being fed. So we end up stuck in servitude. We serve the machine without even any consideration and thinking. And this what's really interesting. We take the smartphone idea further. Then what we get is how it distracts us and how it shifts our experiences of things. And when we create, when we're together with people, we create meaning. We create events, So I'm going out this afternoon with my friend Tony. We will create an experience together. I think about this a lot in terms of the classroom. In the classroom where I'm teaching, we're creating an experience together. And what the research shows in this area is that as soon as one of those people or one person in that group picks up a mobile phone and uses a mobile phone, people become distracted by the mobile phone and stop focusing on the thing that they're there for. And that means that we don't create this this meaningful experience because we detract from the experience in some way. We detract from it through this distraction. And what's really interesting, not only does that it impact the other person or people in the group, but it also means that we don't have an enriching experience from that experience. We're not enriched by it because we're distracted in that moment. We get less out of it. So as soon as one person picks up their mobile phone and does something on that mobile phone, everybody's experience is undermined, and the person doing it is undermined. But here's the interesting thing: if you talk to people about that, they'll go, oh yeah, that really happens. That really happens. That really happens when so-and-so gets his phone out. It just ruins the whole moment for me. And then you watch those people, this has been done in classroom settings, you watch those same people saying that in classroom settings, and they're getting their phones out. So it's almost, we're so enslaved by this device. We are so much in servitude, to use Aldous Huxley's phrase. We're so much in servitude to these distractions and propaganda, to this device, that we miss, not necessarily the information. I'm thinking about this now in terms of being in the classroom and teaching. Not necessarily the information. Okay, you can go and find the information in the book usually afterwards. But you miss the experience. So if you move that out of the classroom and think of, I don't know, you're out for a meal with people. Now, I say this all the time, and I've done it. You're out for a meal with people, and everybody gets their phones out. We're missing the experience now because we've undermined the experience. No, I don't want to see the picture on your mobile phone. No, I don't want to see that. No, I don't want you to take a picture of your food. I mean, what are you doing that for? I mean, I think this is part of the problem with social media. If your life's all right and you're on social media observing the lives of others and their lives are all right, then all is all right. But if you're not all right and you're observing the lives of people on social media where their lives are all right, that's going to undermine your mental health. And we have this mental health epidemic, don't we? Poor mental health epidemic. So what are we doing on our mobile phones when we post this on? And you know, I'm not saying I don't do this. I do this. You know what I mean? Try to do it as little as possible in terms of posting. Look at how amazing my life is posts, but because I don't think that's helpful to other people because if their lives aren't amazing, and the reality is your life's not amazing either. We all know that everybody's life is pretty much kind of mundane and ordinary, or you know, has moments of crapness. We all know that, don't we? You know. So when we share these things on social media, what we're doing, consciously or unconsciously, is saying, "Look how amazing my life is." I tell you what, you know. There was an app that attempted to do this. There was an app that attempted to do this a while back. Don't know where it went. I played with it for a while, and there was nobody else on it that I knew, so it didn't really work out. But when somebody posted something, in order to see what that person had posted, you had to post a picture of what you were doing at that moment in time. And I suspect, I don't know whether it took off or not. It certainly, I ended up deleting it because there was nobody on it. But you know, nobody wants that, do they? Because nobody wants to promote the rubbish stuff in their lives. And there's rubbish stuff in all of our lives. But what about the person who's having a bad time of it, who constantly sees people at this gig, eating this meal, out with all these mates, all that kind of thing? What about that? And what are we trying to do as a society? All right, not as individuals, right? Well, let's not individualize this because we're all up to it. We're all at it. We're all doing it. What are we doing culturally as a society by constantly showing people all the brilliant things going on in our lives, but not the reality of our lives, creating in other people's minds a skewed view of how everybody else's life is? Oh, we've got a mental health crisis. Get away. Quelle surprise, Rodney, as Del Boy would say. Of course we've got a bloody mental health crisis. Because we're not living in the real world. We're not living in the reality of the world. Stoic philosophers, paraphrasing the Stoic philosophers, who say all the time, you know, life's a bit rubbish, and putting up with life and the rubbishy kind of aspects of it is the stuff that is the stuff of life. You know what I mean? Anyway, there you go. So that's my digital detox, digital Sabbath kind of thing, you know. And it's not about not using your phone on a Sunday. It's about mindful use of your mobile phone, isn't it? That's the thing. Anyway, there you are. I got a bit randy, didn't it? Shocking. Well, this is a tardigrade. I've just noticed this. Tardigrade. Tardigrades are fab. Tardigrades can survive anywhere. I think it's even thought that there might be some on the moon, because they got took there by the Americans. Well, maybe they did. Or maybe they haven't even been there. The one thing that I'll kind of finish with, is that bit about, I think, and it doesn't have to be Sunday, it could be whatever day works for you. It can even be a pocket of time. You can make it a Thursday night or whatever. Is to spend time in quiet, to spend time in peace, peaceful surroundings. Environment matters. Environment is everything. And I read something this week. I follow somebody called the Climate Optimist on Substack. Very good. And they were saying environment matters. We live in a very noisy world, and they say in the article that they don't have an answer to the problem, but we have to acknowledge, they say, that noise is not harmless. And as humans, we've developed a response to noise, especially loud and buzzing noises, interestingly, big mosquitoes or whatever. We've developed a sense anyway of loud noise in general as being potential danger. Because remember, back in the day when we're evolving, it's a very quiet world, you know. And when it's noisy, our bodies release adrenaline. So we're focused on whatever it is making the noise. We need to check out whatever the noise is. And actually, I love watching my dog, Kathy the dog. She's just come back from a walk there. I love watching her. Whenever there's a noise, whenever we're in the house quiet, and we do manage to have a quiet house sometimes, whenever it's quiet and a noise occurs outside, somebody starts to mow their lawn or something, she sits up and she listens intently till she's sure the noise isn't getting louder, i.e. closer, or figures out whether it's a noise she's familiar with, looks at us to see how we're responding, and then she settles back down. So she's flooded with adrenaline to think, right, what is this? To focus. Adrenaline gives us focus, at least in the short term. And if we think about the amount of noise in our environment, the constant ping of our cell phones, the television on in the background, traffic noise, all of that kind of thing. If we think about that, it would be plausible to assume that if that noise is there all the time, and our adrenaline is responding to that, our bodies are responding to that with adrenaline, it would be plausible to think that leads to a great deal of the formulation of a stress response, wouldn't it? So I think we need to create space, and I suppose this is where I think back to when I used to go to church as a teenager and as a young adult, and it was a great space for quiet reflection. And sometimes my mind would wander off, and what have you. But I was very fortunate to experience sermons by some very effective speakers. Very, very, very good speakers. Very intellectual people. Largely men, I have to say. I think that's a particular thing with the church, isn't it? Largely men, but there were I remember some great women speakers as well. And it was a time to ponder and have activators thrown at you. Think about this. Think about how you operate in the world. Think about the impact on other people. Just what I've done there, I suppose. Think about all that. So I was quite fortunate in that. So it was a quiet time, and then it was a quiet time at home. We go home from church, and again, I lived in very traditional times. And just as Mum would make Dad might go to the garden, Mum might make the Sunday lunch. We'd have quiet Sunday lunch and be quiet on a Sunday afternoon. Couldn't go to shops, all that kind of thing. So I think we live in a world of noise that we've become accustomed to. So I think maybe we need a bit of a noise audit of our lives, and we need to figure out where we get the quiet bits. Where do we let our minds completely switch off? And I suppose that brings my thoughts to meditation. Deliberately taking yourself away daily, just for a few minutes, but maybe on a weekend for a bit longer. Taking yourself away to a quiet space and being quiet, probably quite important. Go and have a walk in the park and sit on a park bench or whatever. Let your mind wander. Find a quiet spot in the house. It might not be devoid of noise. There's always a hubbub, isn't there, in the background, but nothing in your intimate space that's creating noise, turn the TV off, turn the phone off, take 10 minutes. It'll still be there when you get back. Anyway, we're all going to go and turn our tellies on now anyway and watch the football, aren't we, I suppose, at some point. So, yeah, there you go. We'll do that. Anyway, there you go. So it's Sunday. So a Sunday live. And I can see the clock ticking 25 minutes in. I just thought, oh, I'll have nothing to say on a Sunday. This will be a quick one. Not trouble anybody, this one. I'll be able to listen to it in 3 minutes. And here we are. But maybe I'm more relaxed, you see, because I have nothing to do, really, until later on in the day. That's interesting, isn't it? There's an interesting thought. So what I'm going to propose is pose a question. Pose a question to me. Pose a self-care, well-being, productivity conundrum, or pick at something that I've said. I don't agree with that, Stephen. Here's what I think. Oh, I don't know. Could you come on? Can you do that on YouTube Live? I don't know. There you go. Let's just see what we fancy, and I'll try and keep this streak up as the week goes on. I'm quite excited by this. Some days it might just be a few minutes, but still, there you go. We'll do it. Have good Sundays. Get yourself sorted for next week. Batch cook some meals. Have some silence. Have some time away from your phone. Spend some time with people that care about you. Okay. See you soon. Bye-bye.